Hi, anger traps. What is an anger trap and what to do about it? Anger is something that we all have to deal with in life today, but anger traps are basically how we get ourselves stuck in an angry state and how it can create states of mental, emotional stress, which basically change our very personality and make us less happy than we should be. You see, human beings are incredibly sensitive to their environment, to what's going on around them, okay? And we have to be very careful with the inputs that we have. And so, what anger traps really mean is how our brain is wired and how we react to certain external situations. And we're in a world today that's more polarized than ever. And it's actually that the technology that we use in our world is actually sticking us into a kind of a rut, and it's hard to get out of that, okay? So, what exactly is happening and what can we do about it? Okay, I'll give you a little story. Some years ago, I went to India, back around 2001 or so. I spent 6 weeks bouncing from one ashram to another. I was in a very peaceful and meditative state when I came back because I wasn't watching the news, I wasn't picking up on the usual gossip of daily life. I was just meditating and living this kind of meditation lifestyle, which is kind of a rarefied lifestyle, refined lifestyle, cool lifestyle. And I remember coming back to Heathrow Airport. I used to live in Ireland, in Dublin, and I would fly through Heathrow on the way. So I remember flying through there, and I was shocked by, at first, there's, Sky News is a big thing in the UK, and the airports, they've these Sky News TV sets everywhere, okay? And all this news just negative, negative. And it's really hit me like somebody was like slapped me across the face. It's really like, wow, what the hell? And I go into the shops and there's loud music playing. And when I got back to Ireland for about the next week, even if, drama TV shows, news programs, everything used to upset me, And what really was happening was because I spent 6 weeks in a kind of refined meditative environment, it reset my brain. And I got used to being peaceful and natural, which is the natural state of being. If we could get a time machine and bring people back from 100 years, a couple of 100 years ago perhaps, they would probably have the same reaction I had. So because people are used to a life that's quieter. If I go back to my youth, I remember like TV programs. I've come across some old TV programs I used to watch on YouTube. And they're so quiet because they didn't have special effects or cool music. And they tended to use drama more, just people talking in a room. Like all these TV shows, 1960s, 70s, 80s, nearly everybody's talking in a room and the odd bit of fisticuffs maybe, okay? So the thing is if we look at the world we live in today, a very simple example is you can just Google something. Let's say you Google tricycles, and you do that a couple of times. Or even if you talk about tricycles, next thing you'll start getting ads for tricycles. If you look up YouTube videos on tricycles, next thing in your feed is tricycles, 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 tricycles. And no matter what you put, you're immediately put into that echo chamber. And you might wonder the reason why. The reason why is actually a very simple reason, and it's a very financial reason why. Basically, Google has to make money out of you. And of course, all the other big players, they just copy what Google does. So, first of all, Google focused in the early days, people like Google and YouTube because it was free access, and everybody gets, put in front of everybody else. So you got a good chance of, sharing your thoughts, your channel growing, your video being seen by a lot of people, etc. But this didn't make a lot of money for Google. And so what Google started doing is using algorithms, and the algorithms will stick you into an echo chamber where they can market to you. So if you put tricycles, for example, it will try and put you in the echo chamber with all the other tricycle people. And then it will try and sell you tricycle accessories, tricycle seats, tricycle paint jobs, movies about tricycles. Okay, I'm being a bit flippant here, but you get the idea. It could be yoga, it could be bodybuilding, it could be sexy ladies, it could be fast cars. Whatever it is, Google will try and stick you into that echo chamber. Okay? And it's just for money, and everybody else does it. Facebook, all the other big platforms, Instagram, etc. Everybody puts you into a chamber with other people like you. And in theory, that's not a problem. But the problem with human beings is is that we are wired in many ways like monkeys. I don't want to deprecate human beings, but we are primates, very intelligent primates. We are primates, and we have a social structure like primates, and one part of that social structure is tribalism. So you're put into an echo chamber of people who are like-minded like you, and they say and talk about the same talking points that you do. And so we look at these news programs, for example, and they'll have the same like left-wing talking points or right-wing talking points or conspiracy talking points or, alien abduction theory talking points or artistic talking point, whatever it is, they all have an angle and they attract certain people. And you go onto these channels and you have the same outraged people talking about something to them that's absolutely outrageous. And, it's a bit like this idea of, teaching to the converted. What's the point? You'd already converted. And that's effectively what they are. So when we put on our favorite news channel, in many ways, we just want to reaffirm our shockedness. Yeah, I was right. I was right to be shocked. That's what we're doing, okay? Because we're tribal creatures. Now, there's also a biological side to this. And the biological side to this is we have a thing called the limbic system in our brain, okay? I'll just throw a quick picture up here of the kind of tree brains, okay? So what we have in the tree brains is we have the brain stem, which is very old, and it's things like breathing and heart rate stuff. And then we have the limbic system, I'll get back to in a second, then we have the neocortex. And we're thinking at a high level, we are thinking from the level of the neocortex. The limbic system, we're thinking at an emotional level. So our feelings and how we react. So we have a thing in the limbic system called the amygdala, and it's the reactionary brain. And basically the way our brain is wired is that there should be kind of a loop where inputs come in, they go into the neocortex, it sends them off to the hippocampus as a place of memories, and then from there it patches them back into the amygdala. So you go through a filtering stage and you remember previous experiences and you filter according to that reaction level, and then it sends a message to the amygdala what to do. But there is a bypass switch whereby the message goes straight to a thing called the thalamus. There's a sense that there's imminent danger. It bypasses the neocortex and goes straight to the amygdala, so no hippocampus is involved. And what happens when this is the case is we have a reaction. It's very useful for things like somebody pulls out in front of you, you just react. Or you're walking down the street and you see somebody very dodgy looking and you just walk the other way. You don't have time to ask philosophical questions that maybe that guy has a weird haircut, maybe he's, got some funny beliefs or something. You just make an impulsive thing of, I don't like to look at this guy. I think he's going to do something violent to me. And you run the other way. If you're living in Afghanistan at the moment, this would be a very useful trait to have. You have these guys walking around the streets with weapons, looking very, very dodgy. And there's a clip I saw of a news conference or news station, and the Taliban come in during the news broadcast, and you have these two very dodgy looking guys standing behind the newscaster. Now, I would look at people like that, I think I'll just go the other way. You don't think about it. You're not using your neocortex. You're not thinking rationally. You're just reacting. So this is very useful, this idea that you get an input, goes to thalamus, and boom, straight across to the amygdala, boom, straight into reaction mode. But the problem is that there's a tendency to overreact. And we have a thing called amygdala hijack, whereby we're kind of on a loop system, that something stimulates us and immediately we go into this mode. And then we flip into this mode over and over and over and over again. And this word is badly used, the word triggered. But yes, we get triggered. Now, I'm not talking about that you're triggering me, but the real triggered, you get triggered into this reaction response. And this is why we see people at riots and so on, or heated debates. At 1 minute they're fine, next minute somebody says something dodgy to them, and immediately they go into this state of great anger and frustration and fear. And they're now in the anger trap because Your brain is basically plastic. And in that case, their brain is being rewired by the constant bombardment of their experiences to react with great fear and anger, because fear and anger are tied together. First is a fear response, a fear that in some way I'm threatened, and with that comes an anger, a natural uh, reaction to being in a state of fear. And so, one of the problems we have, you've got a thing called the conscious mind, subconscious mind. Your subconscious mind does not know the difference between reality and fantasy. And so when we're watching all these news programs, which are all echo chambers, and we're getting that propaganda of that particular viewpoint, we tend to uh, bypass this whole, think about it through the neocortex, have a look at the memories in the hippocampus, decide what to do. That decision-making process goes out the window. We actually go back to a more primitive stage whereby we don't use our neocortex. The neocortex, actually, in the amygdala hijack, it shuts down, and you go back to a more primitive. That's why we're in a heated fight. We start losing our discernment, and we just get very, very aggressive. We might later on think, wow, what did I do there? What's happening is you're regressing down to a state that's a sort of survival state. Now, this survival state can be very useful, but the problem with the anger trap is your brain gets rewired that the smallest thing will put you there. And this is why we get things like very violent movies, TV shows, computer games. And I'm actually more concerned with things like news feeds, YouTube videos, news channels that have a very propagandist angle at them. And we start buying into a view of life. We see this, for example, at the present situation, which we got going with, vaccines and so on, and some people pro and some people against, and some people reacting very strongly each way. But people are in an echo chamber, and they're listening and watching other people reaffirm their beliefs. And they're getting more and more into this position of an anger trap, of a amygdala hijacking, that the moment the person says one of those words from the other side of the post, immediately they're thrown into this state of emotionality. And we've seen riots and so on over these sort of things. So this is basically anger traps. It is a natural part of our evolution to react this way for survival. But evolution never taught about internet marketing. And it's the internet marketing which is actually our biggest problem, because we are put in an echo chamber so that the people running all those platforms can make money. But in the process, we are being fed propaganda of only one side. Now, when I was a kid growing up, I used to sit with my dad and watch a lot of news programs and very interesting discussion programs. You can look on YouTube, you'll actually see some of these old interviews that people used to have, whereby people could disagree and people could have educated discussions, and you could agree to disagree with somebody else, and whereby the journalist did not have a fixed agenda. These days, it seems to be that every journalist, either left-wing or right-wing, has a very fixed agenda, rather than having a more, let's just chat and let's just talk and let's see, which what they used to have. Now, I'm not saying that news and news programs and so on used to be ideal yesterday. They also had their failings. And every news outlet, every newspaper, every magazine, every news show has its prejudices, its biases. Of course, we all have. But there was some attempt at a medium path. And that's really, really lacking today. So what are we to do with it? Well, if we keep going the way we're going to just end up in a society where one bunch is on this side of the street shouting at one bunch over there. And this will be for every different issue you come across. You'll just have people clashing all the time, rioting the streets, people shouting, screaming at each other. There's a couple of things. Number one, it would be helpful if our internet overlords would think of a better way of making money out of people and give people a broader frame of reference so that people can have more varied inputs rather than propaganda A or propaganda B or propaganda C or propaganda D or propaganda E. Do you know what I mean? That's number one. Number two is there is a tendency of news outlets to censor those things which don't fit in. And it would be helpful, even if you still put people into echo chambers for money-making reasons, that you just try not to censor people. And if people disagree with you, it's okay. and accept that they disagree with you, because ultimately people who are probably into your channel or into your news media or whatever it is will probably not buy into those people anyway, if that's their beliefs, that's their biases anyway. Number three, we ourselves have to try and educate ourselves to make an effort to look at different forms of media and try and get intelligent viewpoints. We had this old system, which is very nice. You see us sometimes talk about Renaissance man. Of course, we could have a Renaissance woman or Renaissance whatever. But the point is, the principle of the Renaissance man or Renaissance person was that person was an all-rounder. Because back in the Renaissance, you could go to college and study everything in 5 or 6 years because there wasn't that much to study. Okay, it's not like information overload today. Everything's super specialized. So the sort of person who can ride a horse, play a fiddle, do dancing, do math sums, speak in public, somebody who knows a bit of philosophy, knows a bit of history, will be seen as somebody who is a Renaissance person, okay? And you don't have to be great at all these things, but an all-rounder is a Renaissance person, okay? So we need to return to that. Our system of education in some ways, years ago, was better that way. For example, people used to have to do the ancient Greek text. They used to learn Latin and Greek, but they used to also learn those ancient Greek texts. And they used to do a lot of like the works of Shakespeare and stuff like that. And that got dumped and it was seen as not specialized enough. But in some way, the baby was thrown out in the bathwater because, you know, the Greek classics are full of morals. Shakespeare is full of morals. There's something bigger about that viewpoint. And I suppose we go back to the 19th century viewpoint. They tend to have a more broad sense of education. Education's now become super specialized. And actually education now, believe it or not, with liberal arts and so on, is now going back to more of a broad perspective. Because everything in life is swingling, going back and forth, back and forth. So we were very generalized, we became very super specialized. And now we're going back to a more generalized approach. So, you know, society might be, or school or college might be educating you this way, but we can make an effort to be more all-rounders, to be Renaissance people. What else can we do? As communities, as forums and so on and so forth, as YouTube channels, we should try and engage people and be willing to talk to people on the other side of the fence without taking offense and understanding their perspective. And the final thing we can do is we can learn to relax ourselves mentally, emotionally, because your brain is flexible. It does not know the difference between reality and fantasy, and it's wired a certain way, but you can also rewire your brain. So things like meditation, deep breathing. Next time you feel yourself starting to get wound up about something, stop looking at it, or stop engaging for a few seconds, and just take a few deep breaths. Maybe count to 20, something like that. And try and step back. And this is quite a challenging thing because you'll want to step into it and get lost in your anger and your frustration. But for a second, try and step back. Initially, it can be hard to see when you're falling into this anger trap. But if you can start to see it, you can pull yourself out. And this is why I recommend things like writing in a diary or video diary or whatever you want to do, so that you start having those, you know, retrospectives on your life. So there's lots of things we can do. Hopefully the internet community will, you know, improve, and we'll find new ways of getting outside of endless echo chambers, which is something we ultimately ended up because somebody wanted to make money on the internet, which I can't blame them for doing that. We have to find a better way. In the meantime, we should try and engage with people. We should try and chill, and we should try and accept other people as best we can. And maybe being with somebody else who's an opposite opinion, we might feel like losing it. Well, then just take a deep breath, turn the other way. Don't engage. Okay, if you can't handle their viewpoint, it's going to blow a fuse. Why do you need to blow a fuse? Do you need to blow a fuse with this person? Do you need to have a fight with somebody in the street or somebody online for the hell of it? Don't lose your peace. Unless it's something you really feel you have to fight for some amazing reason, take a few deep breaths, turn the other way, disconnect from whatever conversation you're having. You don't have to buy into that. So that's it. Anger traps, what they are, what we can do about it. And that's it really. I hope you like the video. Please like, subscribe if you do. And I'll talk to you next time.